Princess Veyla stood before the mirror in her ceremonial chamber, staring at the silver marriage robes that felt like chains. Outside, diplomats from a dozen worlds gathered to witness the union that would end 3 years of border wars between the Krynn Empire and humanity. She didn't care about peace. She cared that her father had sold her to a species she despised. Humans were primitive, violent, short-lived creatures who relied on brute force instead of elegance. Her attendant entered and whispered that the groom had arrived. Veyla's purple eyes narrowed. She would go through with the ceremony, but the human would regret ever accepting this arrangement. The grand hall gleamed with crystalline architecture, filled with officials wearing the colors of both empires. Veyla walked down the aisle with her head high, radiating contempt. At the altar stood a human in a dark military uniform, Captain Derek Stone. He was tall for his species, with steady brown eyes and a scar along his jaw. When their eyes met, she expected to see arrogance or lust. Instead, she saw only quiet resolve. The officiant began the ancient words. Veyla interrupted. I want everyone to know I didn't choose this. I'm here because my empire demands it, not because I respect the creature standing beside me. Gasps echoed through the hall. Derek didn't flinch. He looked at her calmly and said, I didn't choose this either, Your Highness, but I chose to honor it. That's the difference between duty and desire. His voice was steady without anger. Veyla felt her prepared insults falter. Before she could respond, the western windows exploded inward. Plasma fire tore through the hall. Screams erupted as radicals in black armor dropped from hovering gunships, weapons blazing. They were Krynn extremists who refused the peace. Veyla's guards raised energy shields, but the attackers had come prepared. Derek moved faster than she thought possible. He tackled her to the ground as a plasma bolt scorched the air where her head had been. Stay down, he shouted. She felt his weight press her against the cold marble. Blood dripped onto her silver robes. He'd been hit. You're wounded, she said, shocked. You're alive, he replied, already pulling a sidearm from his uniform. He rose and fired 3 precise shots, dropping an attacker mid-flight. Veyla watched in stunned silence as the human moved like a predator, using columns for cover, coordinating with her guards in a language he'd barely learned. He wasn't elegant. He was effective, brutal, relentless. When the last attacker fell, Derek collapsed against a pillar, clutching his shoulder. Veyla rushed to him. Why did you protect me? You said you didn't want this marriage. He looked at her with those steady eyes. I didn't want the choice taken from me, but I'll die before I let someone take yours. The palace medical wing hummed with activity. Veyla sat beside Derek's bed as doctors sealed the plasma wound in his shoulder. Her hands trembled as she held a cloth stained with his blood. He'd barely known her, yet he'd thrown himself into fire. Her father entered, flanked by human and Krynn officials. The radicals have been traced to a cell in the northern provinces, he said gravely. They're planning another attack, larger. They want to kill you both and reignite the war. Derek sat up despite the doctor's protests. Then we don't give them the chance. We hit them first. Veyla's father shook his head. Captain, you're injured, and Veyla is not a soldier. She's Krynn royalty, Derek said. I've read the histories. Your people were warriors long before they were diplomats. She can fight. Veyla met his gaze. For the first time, she saw not a human, but a partner. He's right, she said. I won't hide while radicals destroy what we've built. Even if I didn't choose it, Derek nodded. Then we end this together. They arrived at the radical compound under cover of darkness. Veyla wore combat armor for the first time in years, her energy blade humming at her side. Derek carried a human rifle and moved with the silence of a trained hunter. The assault began with precision. Krynn shields absorbed incoming fire while human explosives breached the compound walls. Veyla fought alongside Derek, her blade cutting through enemies as his rifle found targets she couldn't reach. She'd always thought human tactics were crude, but now she understood. They adapted, improvised, survived. When a grenade landed near them, Derek grabbed it and hurled it back before it detonated, saving a dozen soldiers. When Veyla's shield failed, he stood over her, firing until his rifle overheated. They reached the command center, where the radical leader broadcast his manifesto. The leader raised a detonator. If we can't have purity, no one will have peace. Derek didn't hesitate. He fired. The detonator fell. The room went silent. Veyla stood beside him, breathing hard. You didn't even pause. Hesitation gets people killed, Derek said, and I'm not losing you. The battle ended, but Derek collapsed as they reached the transport. The plasma wound had reopened, and he'd pushed too hard. Medics surrounded him, shouting orders. Veyla gripped his hand as they loaded him onto the medical shuttle. His eyes flickered open. Did we win? We won, she whispered. Because of you. Because of us, he corrected. His hand squeezed hers weakly. Veyla, listen. You don't have to go through with this. You've done enough. Peace is secured. You're free. Tears fell down her cheeks, something she hadn't done since childhood. I don't want to be free of you, Derek Stone. I wanted to hate you. I tried. But you showed me what humanity really means. It's not about how long you live or how advanced your technology is. It's about standing up when everything tells you to fall. It's about choosing sacrifice over safety. The shuttle doors began to close. She leaned close. I'm choosing you, not because anyone forced me. Because you're worth fighting for. Derek smiled even as his eyes closed. Then I guess I'm the luckiest human alive. The medics rushed him into surgery. Veyla stood in the corridor, still wearing her blood-stained armor, and made a vow. She would fight for this marriage the way he'd fought for her, with everything she had. And when he woke, she would tell him the truth. That somewhere between the insults and the gunfire, the princess who feared humans had fallen in love with one.